practicing as such in the firm of Gatama and Associates. I'm also managing partner of Salvanis Partners and the founder of Lotec KE. I'm also born again. I love Jesus Christ.
All right. Quite interesting to have born again Christians on this particular segment, given that we're talking about the issues of religion and cultism. And which brings me to the first question, which should give this conversation a context. The issue of cultism and religion. What is the borderline on this particular issue? Because now we have come to realize that religion can quite border cultism. I'll start with you, Monde.
Yes, maybe I'll start by trying to give religion a definition. And religion is a little complex and multifaceted. But basically, religion refers to the practices, the ideas, and the beliefs that people have concerning their way of life or how the society wants things done. And this, in this case, it's in respect to a supernatural being or something that people believe in. Religion by itself, I believe, may not be as bad as we have always assumed. But then if it goes to the extreme ends, it becomes cultism. Okay. And that is what I believe we really need to talk about and to get into depth about, because cultism, in my opinion, is the extremist end of religion.
All right, Akira, from what you said, I know Omondi has tried to bring it into context, but given that he has termed that it is religion to the extreme, to the borderline, and in Kenya we have what we call freedom of religion or association, in terms of you can associate with this particular church and that sort of context. Where is the borderline between my freedom of choice in terms of religion and me entering into some sort of a cult? Because again, it's my choice.
Well, Irene, what I would say here is that there is barely a distinction between religion and cultism. They are intertwined, and sometimes if you are not careful, you can use religion and cultism interchangeably. Okay. If you're not careful, because there's just a thin line differentiating them. Now, what I can say is that when we talk about the freedom of worship, the freedom of association, which is actually, first of all, enshrined in the 1948 Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which was by virtue of Article 2.5 of the Constitution of Kenya, ratified as part of the laws of the Republic of Kenya. And these rights were actually put together in one chapter in the Constitution called the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights are inherent human rights which are indivisible. Although we have aspects where these rights can be limited. And that, I think, is the backbone of our discussion today on whether or not religion can be, or church can be, regulated. So my upshot is that there's a thin line bordering religion and cultism.
Then it begs the question, given that there is a thin line between these two particular groups, are cults allowed in the country, given that it's a form of can you call it a form of worship or association? Are they allowed in the country? Because it's not the first time we're witnessing cults in this country. They have been there before. Are they an illegal entity in the nation?
Well, when we begin by going through some bits of our laws, are you aware that Kenya has the Witchcraft Act?
Which again is something
so inside the Witchcraft Act, there are distinct descriptions of what amounts to witchcraft. And by virtue of that act, these descriptions criminally illegalizes the practice of witchcraft. Okay. But not so on cultism. Right. There is no cult act that will be able to define to the nation that if we do A, B, C, D, that is cult, you are practicing cult. And I think that is where, from where I see it, from the perspective of where I see, is where Kenya is going to or trying to go into. But, meanwhile, I think you will understand that religion is very emotive.
It's a very emotive subject.
If I can take you to a brief history, I would pick just one aspect of the Central Europe War. It was a 30-year war pegged on religion,
Okay.
from 1618 to 1648. And do you know what ended the war? Not that they defined for themselves what true religion is, but they chose to sit down and say, on this basis, we now have the Peace of Westphalia and the Peace of Munster, which guarantees that we are going to coexist but respect the borderlines of our practices. And so religion at the end of it, however we may want to put in regulation, we are only going to end up with peace treaties.
to find a way of coexisting.
Yes, to find a way of coexisting.
Omondi, from where you sit, looking at the way the issue is, and Akira has rightly put it, that there hasn't been laws concerning it. What do you think concerning cults being allowed here in the country?
Well, maybe I'll start by agreeing with what Akiro has said, that as a country, and maybe in several other countries, there are no laws in place to curb cultism. But I believe because of what we've seen in the past few months or few days, as a nation, we need to sit down and rethink and get a way out and maybe come up with laws or ways to curb cultism. As we speak right now, we don't have laws to do that, but I believe as a nation, that is where we are headed to, because if that is not done, then more damage is going to be done, and it's only responsible to have us as a nation do that.
Okay, now
maybe if I pick it from where Omondi has left on the question that maybe eloped me on whether cultism is allowed in Kenya. I can begin from the fact that the United States of America, which actually has been like the watchdog of the freedoms of association. A few years ago, it legalized the Church of Satan, which actually is also exempt from paying taxes to the IRS, that is the Internal Revenue Service. And so by that practice, when we begin to now be radical on cultism, then you will hear some voices from outside Kenya speaking about give them freedom. But as you see, the country is much charged and agitated. Lives have been lost on a very stupid practices. I think that the country is simply making a point that cultism is a no-go zone in the country, albeit there is no law.
All right. Which now brings the question of, when we started, we talked about the issue of freedom of worship, all right? And somebody is guaranteed the choice to make a choice of whether either I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, I am in this particular cult or this particular sect, and what have you. So where do we differentiate where you can, infringe that particular right so as to protect the citizen? In this case, what we witnessed in Shakahola, I saw some of the victims while they were being rescued from that particular forest, some were crying that, please don't give me food, don't give me water, actually don't even rescue me. But then they're saying it from a point of, it's my freedom to choose this particular path, but the state is looking at it as, we have the mandate to protect the citizen. So where do we bring the balancing act on this particular issue? I'll start with you, Monde.
Okay, well, I believe as at now, we don't have what I would refer to as preventive measures towards such, But then in case we get to a point where, as a result of extreme religious practices, lives are endangered, or we get to a point where we lose lives, then I believe at that particular point, the government can come in and through the criminal justice system, find a way of dealing with those who are involved, because we don't have laws that are really against cultism. Okay. So I believe the only way is through the criminal justice system, and that will only come in after the acts or after the acts of cultism themselves.
All right.
Yes.
Why do you see it, Akiro?
Probably, what I could say that where there are no specific laws relating to a certain matter, Kenya is always interesting. They will always run to different pieces of legislations to try and curb the situation as they sort out a solution, a lasting solution. For instance, we can go to the Children's Act in defense of the rights of the children, where although the parent has a hand in upbringing of the children, the state has a higher hand.
Okay.
At the end of it, the child belongs to the state.
Yeah.
And the state has a responsibility to protect the child. It is queer, unheard of, very unethical kind of conduct to include a child into practices of fasting for more than a day.
Okay.
I mean,
it's unheard of.
It's unheard of.
Yeah.
Even in the Bible.
Yeah.
I've really interacted with a few friends of mine who are Muslims, and I've never heard of them also speak of such kind of a situation in the Quran. So we can't say that there is a particular religion that actually legalizes the children or those who are sick. Because the mainstream Christian denomination that I know of, if you are sick and taking medication,